So good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Greenfield. I'm your chair for today. You've got the housekeeping on this slide here. If you could put questions for the panelists into the chat box during their presentations, we will then have time for Q&A and discussion after all of the presentations. So what we're going to be discussing today is circular economy and circular economy strategies and planning for adopting a circular economy. And we've got four brilliant speakers, Halid Abu-Bakar from the University of Exeter, Riku Sinervo from Sitra, Pauline Metivier from ReLondon, and Gerrard from West Midlands Combined Authority. They're all going to give a 5-minute overview of the work that they're doing and that they have undertaken. And then we're going to go into audience Q&A. And we're going to finish at about 1 o'clock UK time. So if any of you are outside of the UK, it's an hour's session. Okay, so the discussion areas that we are going to explore today revolve around circular economy route maps. So what are the considerations for developing a circular economy route map? What the learnings are? What policy and priority actions need to be undertaken? And how do we ensure a wide adoption of actions? And to start us off today, we've got a brilliant speaker, Halid Abu-Bakar. And let me tell you a little bit about Halid before he gets too embarrassed. An award-winning strategic designer with specialism in design thinking and data-driven innovation. Halid is currently in a postdoctoral research role at the University of Exeter Business School, leading the development of a UK-wide circular economy roadmap. Halid has a PhD in data-driven consumption patterns and segmentation and specialised in design thinking and data-driven innovation. He is experienced in big data analytics using both supervised and unsupervised machine learning techniques and novel research methodologies. Halid, that builds you up. Hopefully you'll be able to live up to that introduction. It's a pleasure to have you. Halid, I'm going to pass over to you.
Thank you very much, David. God, that's quite a bar you've just set for me. But thank you very much for this and welcome everybody. So I don't think I need to give any sort of further introduction to myself. So essentially, my work with the Circular Economy Hub based at sort of University of Exeter is to attempt to develop a workflow that sort of enables the standardization of the sort of the approaches towards road mapping in circular economy. So what I have been attempting to do all this time is to ascertain whether there are any sort of, that's by looking at existing circular economy roadmaps and all the efforts done sort of internationally to develop roadmaps for circular economy to transitioning, to see if there are any discernible patterns and types of roadmaps, and also whether there are any sort of defining characteristics of these these different types of roadmaps, whether they are actually underpinned by any sort of kind of principles. So my work is to try and identify these principles and see whether sort of these different types do have any sort of identity, and then try to harness these identity to help develop, if you like, a framework that would help practitioners to develop their own circular economy roadmaps. So I did this by an extensive thematic analysis and sort of natural language processing of existing circular economy roadmaps. Essentially, we all know what a sort of circular economy roadmap is. It is a strategic planning tool used essentially to forecast the critical development needs and the steps required to reach major advantages in a particular area. Road mapping is quite collaborative, it's iterative, but it's also quite amorphous, as in it does not maintain its shape throughout the process. It changes, and it's heavily determined by the inputs of contributors and also the output at every single stage. There are no, as I said in the beginning, there are no standardized methodologies out there. So it's generally done by sort of informal groups of specialists in particular niche areas. And then we don't have a scientific sort of methodology out there, systematic methodology out there to actually help practitioners develop their own roadmaps. And especially in the area of circular economy, we know circular economy is such a heterogeneous concept. There's a sort of a wide variety of practitioners, schools of thoughts, and they all have different motivations. So this is actually mirrored in all the existing circular roadmaps that we have out there. So a circular economy roadmap, in an ideal world, should be able to lay out some preconditions, milestones, and all the necessary steps to implement the circular economy. And then there are also KPIs out there to measure sort of desired outcomes, and then there are metrics out there to keep those KPIs in check. My work sort of split it into 4 different phases. And it's been heavily, like I said, it's been heavily influenced by existing circular economy roadmaps out there, some of which I'm sure would be discussed in the upcoming presentations. So it started with phase 1, which is what this presentation is all about. So it's about, again, trying to create a standardized approach towards developing the roadmap. Seeing whether there are any foundations or any underpinning principles, and also coming up with a framework that sets the typology that sort of, put them in different categories and different types. And then there is phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, which is out of the scope of this presentation, because I think I've only got 5 minutes to go through this. So, in a nutshell, any roadmap, not just circular economy roadmap, is actually made up of 3 sort of major, if you like, principles. So there's the focus area. So you can't be too broad. You've got to have an area that you're focusing on. And then that should lead to the action plan. There's going to be an action plan. And then what are the different ways? How do we action these action plans? What are the different ways that we can actually implement these action plans? And those are pilots. So essentially, I call it the FAP principle, because I looked into all the different types of road mapping techniques, including technology roadmaps, and then these are some of the sort of the reverberating themes. In my work, I've been able to summarize the types or the typology into 3 major types. There are several other types, but then these are the ones that seem to be unique. They have their own characteristics in terms of the data, or in terms of what actually gives the roadmap its substance, and also in terms of the motivations behind these roadmaps. So it starts with material type of roadmap, which are, I would call it the type at the bottom of the road mapping hierarchy. So these are quite granular normally in nature, because they represent the work of a particular sector, the resources that are prevalent within that sector, and also the materials, so the most dominant materials being used. And you see that often these types of roadmaps are characterized with process-heavy sort of development work. It's also data-driven. When we do LCA or MFA, they often reside in these types of roadmaps, and then it moves up the hierarchy where we've got the municipal types of roadmaps, where we've got industries coming together into this sort of urban metabolism, industrial symbiosis, and so on and so forth. We've got different process integrations at this stage, and normally these ones sort of lead to national roadmaps. So if you look at these different patterns, I'm going to really go through some of these visualized patterns of different types of roadmaps that I have actually uncovered in my work. These are some of the dominant patterns within national types of circular roadmaps. We've got a value chain, so there's really a lot of literature on this. Food waste, it sits really, really prominently in national roadmap agenda. And then circular business models, environmental impacts of our practices. When you go on to municipal types of roadmaps, we've got these patterns. So there's the local businesses. So everything is sort of focused on the local activities, the efficiency of raw materials, recycled materials, and then things all happening at the local level. And then materials, we've got the sustainability. Again, circular business model is quite prominent. Recycled materials, and then the product design. So this has led to what I call the foundations. Conscious of time, so I'm really going to wrap through this, and then feel free to ask me questions later. So there are essentially 3 different layers that underpin the development of any type of circular economy roadmap. We've got the driver layer, which is of course under which we've got the motivation behind the roadmap, or the level, and then what gives its substance, what I call the fuel, which is normally dependent on the typology. We've got the action layer, and then there is the measure layer, how to measure the efficacy of the roadmap. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. And apologies if I've skipped some of the important aspects of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Halid. That was a really quick look at, I know what has been a huge amount of work to try and bring this all together. Yes, we will be asking questions later, and of course all of the slides and this recording will be available through the Circular Economy Hub after today's event. So without further ado, we'll go on to our second presenter. And we're lucky enough to have Riku Sinervo from Sitra speaking today. Riku works as a specialist in the circular economy area. His key duties in the team include working on the roadmap to a circular economy and Citra's list of the most interesting companies in the circular economy in Finland. Riku previously worked on waste management development projects at Helsinki Regional Environmental Services, and has also got experiences of working on an idea competition on sustainable business and the world of startups. Riku has a master's degree in environmental technology from the University of, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, Riku, I will let you do that. In addition to major studies, he also took courses in technology, business, and in leadership and management. Riku, you're very welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, David. The city is called Jyväskylä. It's a city in central Finland, but yeah, hard to pronounce. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here today and talk you about circular economy roadmaps and share some learnings from Finland. Before jumping into roadmaps, just briefly a couple of words about Sitra. So the Finnish Innovation Fund, Sitra, was established a bit more than 50 years ago by Finnish Parliament. We are an independent future fund. We provide new information. We fund pilots and experiments, and also act as this kind of networker and trainer in Finnish society. And well, basically our mission is to develop the successful Finland of tomorrow. Citra's work on circular economy started in 2015, and our goal is to push Finland to become a global forerunner in the circular economy. And like some of you might know, in 2016, Finland was the first country in the world to create the national circular economy roadmap, and this was done under the leadership of Sitra. So Sitra played a crucial role in kickstarting the circular economy transition in Finland. And back then we identified that circular economy is something that Finland should take seriously. And as an independent future fund, it was quite natural for us to take the lead on Finland's circular economy journey. And I think that at its best, circular economy roadmap is a tool for change. It helps to define the required steps to make the circular transformation. And also it compiles key stakeholders' views on the most important changes and actions required for the circular transformation. So definitely cooperation is the starting point and requirement for the roadmap. In order to make the change, you need to listen to stakeholders, get a broad commitment, and encourage the ownership of the roadmap process. And between 2016 and 2020, Sitra was coordinating the roadmap work in Finland. We accelerated the adoption of the roadmap by providing co-funding for over 70 projects and total worth of 16 million euros. Someone could say that it's not very much, but we saw it as a seed funding to get more and more stakeholders involved to circular economy. And after this, several companies, cities, and organizations, they have prepared own strategies for circular economy and companies have seized to some opportunities offered by circular economy. And an important continuation of the roadmap work started by Sitra was the Governmental Strategic Circular Economy Program that was launched last year. And since the launch of this program, the ownership and the coordination of national circular economy work has switched to ministries. And this was also one goal for Sitra's roadmap work. We knew that we are not able to continue the coordination of the circular economy roadmap forever. Our role was more to kickstart the transition. And now this ministerial program has a long-term mandate to promote circular economy in Finland, and it's coordinated by the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment and the Ministry of Environment in Finland. And I think that this program is quite ambitious. It outlines 3 objectives. I don't read these out loud now, but take a look on them. They are quite specific and measurable goals, and there might be some inspiration on those goals for some of you. Also, I want to point out that it's very vital to invest in the execution of the roadmap. Even a good roadmap or strategy can fail because of the poor execution. And this is something that we kept asked quite often, that how do you manage to implement the circular economy roadmap? I think that the key points are that define the management model. You need to ensure that the roadmap is coordinated by a party that has the skills and resources to act as a driver of change. Also, involving stakeholders and finding synergies is important. The main responsibility for the roadmap implementation lies with the owners of the actions and the pilot projects. And also one function of the roadmap is to share best practices and inspire other organizations to engage and contribute to the roadmap. And probably the most important one to map funding models for the roadmap actions. So it's essential to reserve funding for the actions from the beginning. And like I said before, Sitra provided funding for over 70 projects as a part of the implementation. And also identifying other existing funding opportunities that can be linked to the roadmap. For example, these could be governmental innovation funds or private funds with circular economy focus. But the execution is something that really needs to be considered all the way from the beginning. But I think that was all that I want to say today. Let's keep the lively discussion going on, and I also want to share with you that we have made this kind of a guide on how to create the national circular economy roadmap based on what we have learned in Sitra. So if you are interested, take a look on these from the link there. But thank you, and let's talk more a little bit later.
Thank you, Riku. That was really fascinating. It's congratulations on being the first country to have a circular economy route map. If you do want to put that link into the chat, I'm sure everybody would appreciate that, because I think
yes, I will do that.
We'll come back to questions in a minute. We've already got one in there, which is a really good question. But we'll go on to our third speaker, who is Pauline Metivier from ReLondon, who's a sustainability and circular economy expert, who has experience in driving sustainable agenda both in the public and private sector, and having previously led the drafting of the Sustainable and Smart Mobility Bill for the French government. So has worked in some very interesting places, as well as driving innovation at Veolia UK. Pauline now heads up ReLondon's business and sector support team, empowering London's businesses to embrace circularity and driving the circular economy agenda in the city through the development of an evidence-based route map and plans. Pauline, you're very welcome. Your 5-minute start now.
Thanks a lot, David. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to be here today. But before I talk to you about how to plan and implement circular economy, just a quick overview of who we are at ReLondon. So we are a partnership between the Mayor of London and the London boroughs. And our mission is to make the circular economy a reality in our city. And for this, we work with like 3 key priority audiences. So we obviously work with the local authorities, the Mayor of London and the London boroughs. We also work with businesses. So we've supported more than 300 businesses the past few years. Mainly small local businesses, but also we've also worked with some larger corporates. And we also communicate directly with citizens through behavior change campaigns where we motivate them to change their behaviors. So today I want to talk to you about key practical advice about how to plan and implement the circular economy, both from a citywide point of view, but also from an individual businesses point of view, from our experience supporting them in that journey. So when you think about it, the principle of the circular economy is actually quite simple. It's about using material in a different way so that they don't just go straight into our bin, but instead actually never leave the loop of usage. However, when you look at it more closely, the flow of material we use doesn't really look as a simple straight line. And it probably looks something a bit more like this. And this is just a map, an aggregated map of material flow around the globe. And if you zoom on it, you actually have more and more kind of tiny flows of material with lots of interrelation, lots of players involved across the supply chain at a global level. So like the big question is, how can individual businesses or like a city plan for an effective shift from this kind of complex global linear system to something that is truly circular? So this is how we've been, doing this in London for the past few years. So 5 years ago, we launched the London Circular Economy Roadmap, where we focused on 5 key sectors where we thought we could have the most impact. So we focused on the built environment, the food industry, the textiles industry, the plastics industry, and the electricals industry. And one thing that was very important at that time is that we gather a lot of public and private stakeholders around the table to define the actions and to really engage them to implement the actions on the ground. And this roadmap is still very important to us, and it's still the basis of the activities we are doing in the city today. So it informed our 5 years business plan in 2020, and it still informed our kind of annual update of our delivery plan as an organization. And one interesting thing is that it has also kind of informed the action plans from other stakeholders. So for example, the One World Living program, which is like a borough-led program about delivering the circular economy in the city, is focusing on the same focus sectors that were defined in our London Circular Economy Roadmap. So this was at a citywide level. But if we want the circular economy to be a success, like each individual organization, businesses will need to implement it. So that's why we've been supporting them at ReLondon the past few years. So we've had them plan how best they can embed circular economy within their business through trainings, workshops, and advisory services. We had them then connect with the right suppliers, business partners, or investors that can make the plan happen. And finally, for the businesses that have developed circular business model, we help them promote their products and services to accelerate their adoption. So what I'd like to do now is to highlight 5 key takeaways that we learned by planning for the circular economy in London and also supporting other planning and implement it. So the first key piece of advice is you can't improve what you don't measure. So actually the very first step is to understand like the current material flow that you handle as an organization. And this is what we've done at London level for the food system. We actually mapped the flow of food in the system, and we launched that report last year at COP. And it was a key driver to implement kind of impactful actions that we are still using today. The second piece of advice is about finding out what's in it for you. So it's really important that you understand why you want to develop the circular economy as an organization so that you can get the buy-in from everyone within your organization. And the circular economy can have lots of benefits. It can be about delivering on your sustainability or carbon targets. It can be about saving costs or generating revenue by developing new markets. It can be about strengthening your customer relationships, or it could be about making your business more resilient by preempting risk and supply shortages. Third piece of advice is about the fact that circular economy is not a one-size-fits-all. So you actually have lots of different ways to make it happen. So based on the kind of your review of your material flow and what you think the circular economy should deliver for you, you need to choose how to make it happen. And this is just like a map of the different types of circular business models that exist across kind of 5 key areas. So just to show you like the very diverse ways you have to make the circular economy happen. Fourth piece of advice is about getting the right people around the table, and that was really said well by the 2 previous presentations. So don't try to do everything yourself, but use people like power to deliver on your behalf. So it's really important because, well, first you can get like very good insights from very different point of view. It's also very important because, yeah, it's a way to kind of get the engagement both internally and externally with stakeholders that can deliver things. And finally, it's important because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's very possible that within an organization, you already have some great circular economy initiatives that may not call themselves like this, but just need to be supported and scaled. And when you don't have the skills internally, you may want to go out there and find some great circular suppliers that can help you deliver on your plan. And the very final piece of advice is, well, don't try to do it perfect. So you can almost forget everything that I told you. And don't spend too much time planning. Don't spend too much time gathering all the data you need. Do with what you have, do with the people you have. Start something and you can refine it in an iterative way. And this is how you can really deliver change on the ground. So that's it for me. And I really be very pleased to hear and about the questions to continue the discussions. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Pauline. That was really insightful and shows what can be done at a regional / London level. And we're going to go to another region now. And our final speaker for today is Jordan Gerrard, who's from the West Midlands Combined Authority. Jordan leads on the development of circular economy policy and the delivery of the West Midlands Combined Authority Circular Economy Routemap in manufacturing, construction and food, and has recently joined Sustainability West Midlands as a young director. Prior to this, he worked in the WMCA's economy team, working on business support and economic strategy. Jordan is a keen advocate for the role that the circular economy and materials efficiency can help the region become more sustainable and achieve its net zero ambitions. Jordan, we look forward to hearing from you in the West Midlands.
Ricky, I didn't unmute myself. Hi, everyone. Thanks, David. I was going to use my 5 minutes just to give an overview of the route map in the West Midlands and how it has influenced and informed our delivery priorities. So we have a circular economy route map that we published in September of last year. So we're just over a year into our delivery of it now. And it provides a vision for how we think our region can become more circular by focusing on manufacturing, construction and food. We chose these 3 sectors because they are 3 areas of strategic importance to the West Midlands and its economy. And they're also 3 sectors that lend themselves quite easily to a circular economy approach. And we hope by taking this approach, by focusing on key sectors, we can unlock maximum benefit without biting off more than we can chew. And why the circular economy? The circular economy forms one of 4 pillars in the West Midlands Energy and Environment Programme, which is helping us to achieve our ambition of being net zero by 2041. As well as obviously helping with those carbon-related targets, the circular economy will also help us to boost our economy, making businesses more resilient and leading to better skilled and higher paying jobs. And it will also help us to achieve some of our wider aims around inclusive growth and sustainable growth as well. So really kind of trying to bring benefit across the board. And then I think a key consideration for developing a route map, especially when you get into a more regional level, I suppose, is to appreciate the activity that is already happening in an area. As Pauline said, a lot of this activity won't necessarily be under the banner of circular economy, but it is still a circular economy activity. And this is something that we uncovered when we were developing our route maps. We did a mapping stage of activity already happening in the West Midlands. And the job of a route map is really to amplify and build on that activity rather than trying to redirect the ship, as it were. And in the West Midlands, these strengths are in across the board. Really, you've got large businesses and SMEs that are already maybe adopting circular economy principles into how they do business or how they design their products. You've got a lot of research centres and universities that are providing the innovation that we'll need to unlock opportunities in the future, especially in the West Midlands around batteries in the sort of east of the region. And also in the West Midlands, we have quite a well-developed and well-established third sector that is doing a lot of work in helping to redistribute food and change attitudes to food as well, through things like slow food initiatives and that kind of thing. So it's a really important part of having a route map, that you appreciate the activity that you've got. And then just finally, kind of rattling through these, our delivery priorities for our circular economy. So our circular economy route map listed a number of interventions for each of those sectors, which we would love to be able to do them all. But obviously, in a resource constrained environment, you can't always do everything, and you don't want to let perfect get in the way of good. So the last year we've been focusing on delivering a industrial symbiosis program in the region to really unlock investment and innovation in key strategic locations. We are currently in the process of developing what we're calling zero waste construction hubs to help support materials exchange and recovery in the construction sector. That is quite an issue for the West Midlands. And we've also just finished actually, but have been creating a framework to encourage and guide the use of repurposing of existing buildings in the region. As regions regenerate, there's quite often a tendency to kind of demolish what's already there. But as we all know, that's not a very circular approach. Yeah, so that's it from me. That's the circular economy route map in the West Midlands and how that is mapping into, or translating, sorry, into activity.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jordan. And yeah, very, very fascinating piece of work in the West Midlands. Could I ask Halid and Riku to come back onto camera? And we've got lots of questions coming up in the chat. So thank you, everybody, for putting your questions in, and do continue to put them up. I will come to the questions in the chat to begin with, but I just want to ask each of the panelists to give their view on one particular question that I'm going to ask, which is, we've heard from your presentations a number of different terms that are related to circular economy: net zero carbon, resource efficiency. I'd just like a few thoughts on how we incorporate circular economy into other policy strategies so that we're not ending up in our own little silo of circular economy and missing some of the interventions around other big ticket policy items. And Riku, as you're off mute, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, like, well, not very easy question to ask, but yeah, I think that probably the most important thing is to identify that the circular economy, at least I see it as a tool to tackle the big sustainability crisis we have going on at the moment. For example, the depletion of natural resources, climate change, and biodiversity loss. So circular economy provides tools to tackle all of these crises. So I think that we should see it as this kind of like toolbox where that we can provide different solutions to tackle these crises. So maybe what I'm trying to say that to find synergies between with circular economy roadmap to, for example, climate change and the biodiversity loss, and link it to other ongoing initiatives and strategies.
Brilliant, thank you, Riku. And I think the key word used there was a toolbox of solutions. Pauline.
Yeah, I think that this is really a key question. And one of the big links we need to be able to make is the link between circular economy and the fight against climate change. And I think one of the big issues, it may sound a bit technical, but I think it's actually quite strategic, is how you account for emissions. Because right now, the main kind of accounting method is to look at territorial emissions, or like cities or countries, they will look at how much emission they emit. But the circular economy is not really about that. It's mainly about how you reduce emissions that are emitted elsewhere, and that comes with the imports you have in your area. So yeah, I think it's really important that countries and cities take some kind of commitment about kind of reducing also those kind of consumption-based emissions, and not only the territorial emissions. And this is how we can make the link.
Brilliant, thank you. Halid and Jordan, I might ask you not to answer this question because we're getting lots of questions through the chat, and I want to go on to a couple of those. And do add in some answers to those. I'm going to start with a question which is actually linked to what Pauline's just talked about from Justina, which is, what are the best ways for measuring circular economy impacts? Halid, maybe I'll go to you first. Based on your research, what do you think are the best methods for measuring circular economy impacts? And you're still on mute. Halid, you're on mute.
Apologies for that. That's the story of my life. Yeah, so I think it's a very important question, and also probably one of the most difficult questions to answer. Any sort of person in circular economy knows that. Again, so in my presentation, I sort of touched on how diverse and also sort of there are several schools of thought within circular economy. And so the best way to make impact, I think it all begins with identifying the sort of the key areas, if you like, within the economy. So, for example, if you're looking at it from an ecological perspective, or from sort of like product design, or like cleaner production perspective, cradle to cradle, or we have the sort of like on city level industrial symbiosis, that sort of industrial ecology. So I think in order to identify the areas where you can make the most impact, it's really, really important to actually systematically look into all those areas of needs, and then probably just focus on one area, and be very, very systematic in your approach. And I think this is the because otherwise it becomes a little bit too big to handle. Yeah. And as we know, circular economy is such a broad concept that it's really, really important to be able to really focus. So first of all, doing some systematic work, and then sort of isolating a particular area.
Brilliant. And that leads nicely into Jordan, who essentially said that's exactly what we've done in the West Midlands. Jordan, do you want to just add something to that, and then we'll go on to another question? I'm just conscious we've got lots of questions coming out, so if you can keep your answers nice and short, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think having that really clear with focus and sort of a data-informed focus on what's going to bring maximum value, especially when you dig down into something like a regional area, helps kind of make sure that you keep that impact viable.
And just, I'm going to ask this to Pauline and Riku, which is linked to that question, as well as a question from Sergio, which is the best metric to use? Are we still playing around with tons of waste recycled and reused, or Are we talking carbon or are we talking other metrics? Pauline, maybe an insight from London.
Yeah. So we actually monitor. The thing is, there are lots of different metrics you can look at depending on, what your objective is. And I think, this is why, I said you need to understand why you want to develop the circular economy in the first place. So monitoring the, waste generation or like tons of waste, I think is still important, but you need to make the link with kind of bigger impact. So you need to make the link with like CO2 emissions or with, local jobs creation, for example. Or like economic growth creation. So so it all depends on what you do, and this is what at ReLondon, that's what we are doing. We are kind of monitoring both the environmental but also the economic benefits.
Brilliant. And Riku?
I think that we are like on a quite good level on what comes to metrics, because I think that maybe like 5-6 years ago, everybody was thinking that, okay, how do we measure circularity? And I think that during past years, we have had a lot of like different studies and reports on how to measure circularity. So I think that we have already, at least now, we have quite good tools on how to measure circularity. But of course, it's just like Pauline and you said that we also need other kind of indicators than just the like the amount of waste generated and the amount of secondary materials used. But I think that there is quite good measures already existing. For example, Finland, they monitor, for example, patents related to circular economy, and for example, number and turnover and personnel of circular economy establishment. Let me see what other here is, pay level in circular economy industries. And I think that these are this kind of like quite good new ways to also monitor circular economy. And for example, different indicators that come to like customer behavior, for example, sharing economy, flea market trade, and that kind of indicators.
Brilliant. No, I think that's really helpful. And I agree with you entirely that actually some of these, let's say, softer metrics or different metrics towards the traditional waste management, which is where a lot of people still think circular economy is. I particularly like the one about new patents registered in circular economy. I think we might have to play around with that one in the UK, because I don't think we've played that one yet. Brilliant. Thank you very much for this. And what I'm going to ask everybody to do that's put questions in, if the speakers are happy to, if we don't get through all of the questions, we'll try and answer some of those separately and send them back. We've got a really nice question here from Jonah. Most academic research on the circular economy indicates circular economy will fail to fulfill its sustainability promises if it isn't embedded in a post-degrowth macroeconomic framework. In what ways has this been considered in your work? Who wants to answer that one? I'm going to ask Halid to actually first. And you're on mute again.
Sorry, the question again. I'm trying to find it here. So
it's a very detailed. I'll tell you what, this one is, Jonah, if you're happy to, I think we'll take this one offline because it is a really detailed and could probably spend hours on it. I'm going to come back to that if we have time. Let's go on to the question from Matt and go to what role does policy play in a roadmap? And Pauline, I'll start with you on that, and then Halid, if you pick that up.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think a roadmap needs to be both kind of like policy. If policy means regulation, it needs to be both kind of, a bit of regulations, a bit of action on the ground, a bit of kind of, working with stakeholders on the ground. For example, in London, like one very successful policy that has been launched the past few years is something called the circular economy statement. So this is something that any big new development in the city needs to put forward when they do their planning application, where they need to highlight how they're going to embed the circular economy principle within their new development. So how they can ensure the building will be able to kind of the building materials will be able to be reused at the end of their lives, or how they have been using like reused material as part of the development. And this kind of key policy is really key to well, first gather data, and then to really drive the sustainable, the circular economy agenda. So yeah, it needs to be a combination. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant, Pauline.
Okay.
And I think you've highlighted planning policy there, and we know that also governmental and local government procurement policy is also quite key. Halid, I don't know if you want to touch on that and any other policies which can be a driver for circular economy. And then I might just ask Jordan to pick up what we've been looking at in the West Midlands on that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think I've got a really quick and short answer to this. I think policy is integral to essentially road mapping. So it's actually a key ingredient in the framework that I'm in the process of developing. So of course, for example, from what I've seen, and I'm sure Riku would back this, so most national level circular economy roadmaps are driven by policy, because it all operates at the top level. Everything sort of, if you like, cascades upwards from the granular types of roadmaps, which essentially are also benefit from policy, but they have a two-way relationship with policy. For example, to give you a sort of like an example on that, we know that research and policy are like two things working on they never meet. They go parallel. But then ways of bridging that gap between research. So if we can find a way of informing policy with research, that is really, really key. And in this framework that I've been talking about, for example, the manufacturing process, material data and that sort of thing, or the use of the material, these are directly influenced by policy. So the quality of the policy, if you like, that informs this would then inform the next level circular economy roadmaps. For example, the ones that are prepared on a municipal level, and then that cascades upwards to the national level. So yeah, policy sort of works in both ways. So it's right from the bottom all the way to the top, and then it works backwards. And with regards to the measurement we talked about the KPIs and the metrics to measure circular economy. Again, I think policy plays a very, very important role there, because we would want to be able to measure how much does policy inform this sort of the implementation of the roadmap, and how much of the roadmap work that we're doing is actually going to inform policy. So if we have metrics in place to actually be able to measure this two-way relationship between policy and implementation, I think that will really be able to crack a lot of things. So yeah, policy plays an indispensable role in sort of, in circular economy.
Thank you, Halid. And Jordan, just in reference to what you've been doing in the West Midlands, how have you moved from strategy or roadmap to policy?
Yeah, so I mean, policy is obviously a great enabler of the circular economy, but it can be quite a barrier as well, as those of us who are involved in practicing in the circular economy kind of come up against. So yeah, as much as it is important, now our roadmap has a lot of policy changes that all have to be made alongside our interventions. I think it is also was one part of that picture when thinking about implementing circular economy, and there are things that you can do without having to change policy. And if we waiting for years for planning policy to change, then we're not going to get anything done. So I think it's important, but it's important as well not to put too much emphasis on the need for policy change.
I'd agree with you, and I think again it depends on which part of policy we're talking about. Alongside Pauline's team, we've been working on a supplementary planning document for London Borough on how to incorporate reuse and recycling into new developments. It took a year to get that in place, but it was actually a lot quicker than putting in place a local plan. So I think there are shortcuts as well. Conscious we've got a few minutes left, so there's two questions I want to address from the questions in the chat. The first one is about circular economy construction hubs. Now, Jordan, you mentioned the work that's being done in the West Midlands, and Pauline, I know that there's also work being done in London on circular economy construction hubs, and I know I'm doing work on circular economy construction hubs in other parts of the country. Rather than talk about the circular economy construction hubs, one of the business models of the circular economy is around sharing economy. How do public bodies across Europe work together to get to a point of change rather than just another series of slightly siloed solutions that might compete with each other in the fullness of time? Pauline, throw that one at you first.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, that's a very good question. I think one of the challenges that the sharing economy, there is no, one solution fits all, once again. So it all depends, if you talk about construction materials, or if you talk about food, or if you talk about clothing, then you may end up with like very different solutions. And the private sector probably have like a big role to play here, because we know, there are some players out there, like developing some kind of digital sharing platforms that, manage to be financially sustainable. So it's about how you, as public organization, you support that, rather than how, as public organization, you organize everything and you develop, something in your, within your own area. So yeah. Probably, yeah, not an easy answer, but that's, yeah.
No, that's fine. Riku, I'm wondering, in Finland, how do public authorities share information between each other, or is there everybody doing it for themselves?
Do you mean that how public organizations share information together, or
Yes.
was it? Okay,
yes.
So it's not about this, like maybe not so much about sharing economies, if I understood correctly.
Well, it's sharing economy, but sharing of data and information to actually accelerate a circular economy.
Yeah. Well, if we talk about sharing information, I think that, of course, we in Finland also pose a challenge that maybe, because circular economy, it's kind of like cross-cutting theme, and we have a lot of different ministries. So there might be the challenge that, for example, circular economy things has mostly been in Finland under the environmental ministry. But I think that during past years, we have started to see a small change in that one, mostly because of the National Circular Economy program coordinated by the ministries. So, and this new program, it's coordinated in together with different ministries, and at least I'm seeing that it's working quite well. The Ministry of Economic and Employment is on board, and the Ministry of Environment, and also Ministry of Forestry. So I might really start to see that this is maybe this kind of like, this program is good platform for cross-cutting discussion in the ministries of Finland. So maybe that's at least one example.
Brilliant. Thank you, Riku. And Jordan, I'll just ask that one of you very briefly, and then I'm going to have to wrap up, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, I suppose, because we need to share best practice, but what the circular economy looks like is going to be very different for different areas, and that's the whole idea of having route maps, especially when you start digging into those municipal and city level ones. But I think events like this are kind of a good way to start.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much for everybody who's put their questions in the chat. I'm afraid we haven't been able to get through all of them, but I think we've got through the majority of them. So we will ask the panelists to just have a look and then share some of the answers directly. I just really want to wrap up by saying I think what we've heard today is a really fascinating insight into how circular economy route maps can be put in place, and some of the learnings from that process over the last few years are already starting to be shared by Riku and Sitra on how to write a circular economy route map, and with Halid's work on trying to develop an English circular economy route map. That's going to be a fascinating insight into what's happening over the next few years. I think we've got some really good key messages. Pauline summarized very nicely that we don't want to do perfect. And I think that's a really important thing. We don't want to do perfect, but we want to do what's relevant for the local area. So where you are exploring circular economy route maps in a local area, make sure that you understand your area and the dynamics of the area and the metrics and outputs that are going to be required, and the link to other sectoral drivers such as net zero carbon and resource efficiency. I would like to just finish by saying that this webinar has been recorded and will be available on the Circular Economy Hub. I wonder, Emily, whether or not you want everybody to put their cameras on so we can do a very quick photo of everybody that's attended. If everybody's happy to do that, please do, and we'll get a little photo of everybody that's online. And I'd like to thank the Circular Economy Hub and Emily in particular for organising today, because we've had a really good turnout. We've had brilliant speakers. And I'd like to thank everybody who's come along today, listened and asked questions. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon wherever you are in the world, and we will see you very soon.